And then are you doing the graphic design or the time-based media for digital media arts? There's 2 tracks for that. Yeah.
I'm under the impression it just had, it was just a more general one. I don't.
Check on your degree program. Yeah.
Maybe it's different between.
No, everybody's aligned. We had to go through a whole rigmarole about that years ago. Yeah, that's why everyone can take classes at different schools now, is because all the degree programs are aligned. All right, Shyla's there. Okay, that's good. Shyla, just make sure the audio is coming through. Give me a thumbs up, please. Everything should be fine. Looks the same as usual. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, great. Let's look at everybody's portfolios. I'm excited to see how everybody did here, putting everything together, all the hard work everyone's done all semester long. Here's Gage.
Here's my playground theme portfolio.
And just make sure that's coming through there. Is the audio coming through? Let's see.
At the start, I gave the summary for the project, explaining that it was made in Blender and there were a few models textured in Substance Painter. I started step by step with which objects were created first, so I started with the slide and then moved on to the rest of the playground. I also talked about the difference between the freeform sculpt mode and the more rigid edit mode. I included the showcase reel. I have our Sketchfab 3D model here.
Cool. That's great. I'm glad we got this new workflow to be able to put the
Fully
entire scene
interactable.
on Sketchfab.
And I have our beauty shots and topology shots. And explained how I made some of the assets shown in there. I also explained how I used the array tool here in the back. I also explained how I exported these files and converted them to be able to work in Substance Painter with an FBX and then bringing them back. And then here we have the kitchen scene. Again, starts with this.
Okay, all of the text should be left align, not centered. That's a big one.
Summary. I describe how this was an accumulation of small projects that eventually fell into one. I explain the process of modeling with the blueprint, making sure it's accurate to real size, marking seams, unwrapping, the thought process behind unwrapping, using the texture to make sure all your pixels look right, nothing is warped. I also explained again exporting these files around, and I especially at the bottom I explained here a little more in depth about the modeling process and unwrapping process. I described how the shaders weren't importing correctly for me from Substance Painter to Blender, so I explained how I manually put the textures in myself using Node Wrangler and getting them to work. But I'd like to go back to the top. I've got the topology beauty shots that we turned in the other day. I have our model here.
Nice.
And then I have the required shots. And then again, describing the background process. Over the semester, I think I really learned a lot about Blender. I feel like in situations, like when I compare how I deal with setbacks now versus how I would deal with setbacks in the beginning of the semester is where I see my biggest growth. I noticed that when things weren't going right with the playground, that I would get very frustrated over it, and I feel like I couldn't find a solution, and I just kind of brute force my way through the rest of the project. And I especially noticed that going back to get some more shots for the portfolio is that my scene is really broken and works in a very strange way. It's very temperamental with me, and I'm not really sure what I did to it, but it doesn't want to work with me all the time. I definitely wanted to showcase, especially in this project that we just did, how far I've come with my modeling skills, and especially paying more attention to the topology and just being a little bit more knowledgeable about setting up a scene that's cohesive and that, well, works a lot better. I tend to use these skills in my own personal and professional career. I definitely want to make some models for myself. I think that'd be really cool to transfer that kind of 2D thought process of a character I have to 3D. I really enjoy miniatures that you would use to do like board games. So I like Warhammer and I like their miniatures, so I think it's cool to learn about the process of what it's like to make those models myself. And I would like to definitely experiment with that kind of workflow over the summer.
Yeah. Okay, great. You did a lot of work here, Gage. Before I forget, so yeah, I remember from the beginning of the semester, Gage showed a hand-painted, I presume, Warhammer miniature of some kind. It's like a custom board game, right? I have not Warhammered. But people make their own miniatures. I understand that much of it. So I want to 3D print my Blender model. At one level, it's this simple. Export as STL. An STL file is going to be something that's 3D printable. So anything that you would have in Blender would be STLable. And just over here, file, export, boom, STL. Okay. It's that simple. It's also not that simple. Okay. So for instance, if I wanted to 3D print this, right? So this is my 3D print thing. I would want, this needs to be manifold meaning that it's airtight or watertight. For some of our models that we've made that just are 3D models, we wouldn't, if they had a hole in it at the bottom, for instance, or something like that, that doesn't break the 3D model. But for a 3D print, it's actually just going in here and kind of just build this, squirting down hot plastic layer by layer by layer by layer by layer. And so it needs to be airtight, and it also needs to be one thing. And so there's you can find lots of tutorial information about this kind of thing. But like I said, export as STL. The other thing is that if you have some sort of multi-part thing, we're going to have to join this. So I'll go Control J. And so now that's one object. That's better. And then I would come over here and remesh it, right? And so a lot of the work that we did previously this semester, where I was telling you to keep your topology down, because we don't want to make things that have a ton of topology. That is not true for 3D printing. For 3D printing, we want the surface to be smooth. It should look more like a unretopologized sculpt, right? And so here I threw the remesh on and dragged the voxel size way down while holding shift until it looked appropriate, right? And so if I go over here to the wireframe view, you look at this, right? So this is the kind of model that if you turn this in during the semester, I would have been like, hey, what are you doing? Are you listening to anything I've been saying? But for 3D printing, this is good, right? Because whatever program, there's a bunch of different ways to go about this, but the most typical way is that the 3D printer will have its own program that takes an STL file and then slices it into layers. And so that's the final part of the process that's different depending on what slicing program you're using. A lot of them have default settings, which will get you going. And because it is a 3D thing, so all semester long, we've only cared about the outside facing shell of the object, right? All semester long, that's all we cared about, because the inside is irrelevant for drawing it on the screen. However, when you 3D print it, the inside becomes important. What are we going to do inside this thing? Most of the time, you can't just build the outside edge and expect the object not to collapse. And so the 3D printing software, all of them have different schemes for doing this kind of stuff. How solid does it need to be filled in? Most of them fill it in with some sort of like grid of some kind. The grid parameters you can change, all that kind of stuff. But this would be a file now where I would right-click on it and say convert to mesh, and then this would be the one I would go to File, Export, STL, send it over to my 3D printer, and then follow the tutorials for whatever 3D printer I had that would be able to set it up. When it comes down to it, the biggest obstacle for 3D printing your stuff is time, right? For everything I've done, the printers are able to make very, very detailed, perfectly detailed models. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take them to do that. They're getting faster, but it's still hours, right? Depending on how big and detailed the object is. So yeah, printing something like this, this would be a good. This kind of shape, something simple here, would be a good first rodeo for 3D printing. In the future, the good news is that we are building a new building at GCC. Over on the north side of campus, the building's currently, they just demolished it, so there's nothing there. It's just an empty lot. The I3 building is going to become our new STEAM center. And right, for those of you not, STEAM is science, technology, engineering, art, and math, right? Essentially this class. But we're going to have a bunch of stuff in there, 3D printers, laser cutters, and a bunch of VR. I'm going to teach most of my classes over there once that's done. forecasted for fall 2026 is, don't write that in pen on your calendar, pencil, right? That's when they hope to open the building. Anyways, and once this is open, there's a whole class that's part of the degree that we don't usually offer called digital fabrication. And we are going to teach that class once that building is open, because we will have the equipment to do so, which will be super fun. We'll do laser cutting, we'll do 3D printing, so on and so forth. Great. So keep that in mind. I've been here for 10 years. I'm much longer part of the institution than a typical student. So this may be after the time horizon for you guys being done. But the good news is community college, it's really easy to go back and just even take one-off classes. Everybody within the sound of my voice who has made it to the end of this class, if you need to take another Farina class, simply ask, okay? You all have the golden ticket now. You made it to the end of one of my classes. If you haven't noticed, not everyone did, right? There's less participation here at the end than there was at the beginning. I mean, most of the classes are like this, but the rate of attrition for some of these classes is higher than others. Anyways, you proved you can make it through. So if you want to get into anything else I teach, just tell me and I can override you in. So I usually make a policy, unless there's something like crazy going on, of overriding everybody into the classes and starting a class with more than the usual enrollment, because we do lose people along the way. So that's 3D printing in a nutshell there. But painting on the 3D prints is a whole other game. I've only done that a touch. There's a bunch of prep you need to do there. You'd be better off looking a lot of that up. There's definitely some sanding and some priming involved in order to make it paintable for whatever kind of paints you're doing. The other cool thing is that, color 3D printers are becoming a thing. Not a super widely used thing yet. And, usually there's only, I don't know, I've seen them with like 4 colors that you could sub in and out. But, that's the future, that you would be able to just print a color thing. And not only color, but print different substrates. So you could have part of it that's bendy, part of it that's stiff, that kind of stuff. I've seen like prototype kind of stuff like that. We don't have anything like that yet. Maybe by the time the building opens. So that'd be cool. You did a really great job here writing the copy for this and explaining what you did. You just need to do 2 things. One, make sure this is always all left aligned. This is harder to read and doesn't create a nice grid for your design. This down here, Gage really understood what was going on with the in-program examples like this, in that you've got the menu and then the visual result. As I glanced at some of these as they were coming in yesterday and the day before, a lot of you just did this. You're only taking part of the message away from that really great example portfolio that I showed to everybody. If you go back and look at that with a more discerning eye, you'll see that a lot of those examples that show the interface also show the visual result. And that's necessary for everyone but us, right? If I look at a Blender menu, I kind of know what it's going to do in a lot of instances, but almost everyone else who has not taken this class is not able to visualize that kind of stuff. And so you need to show them the visual result over here, right? A lot of you did this, but didn't include this, right? And so the idea that you're making an array that does this, although I don't know what you're trying to show me here exactly, right? Just show the array modifier that you use to make this and this. This one's pretty good here. That's great. The only downside up here is that this is all one run-on paragraph. So at the very least, break this up into separate sections, right? The rule that like every paragraph needs to have 3 sentences for this kind of like portfolio copywriting here, I would say is not necessary. It's much more important to break it up and put make sure there's a visual. These are really like extended captions. And so break this up some more so that you have the image of the flower pot above this part about the flower pot, right? You've done a good job here, but you need to put this there. Now, and the other thing that you need to fix in the portfolio is that you need to draw the person in. You need to put the beauty shots at the beginning, right? That's what we're doing here, right? We're making really great images. You need to put that right at the top and then show people that you're a thoughtful image maker. I don't think it's a good idea to start off with a whole big blob of text and no images on Behance or any portfolio site, because we're looking. We need to look at the thing. You've got some good beauty shots. They need to be at the top, right? And then maybe I'm a music person. How do you pick your set list for a musical performance? Second best song first, best song last, period, right? That's the formula. Unless unless all your songs are just total bangers, that's what everyone does, right? And so you need to draw people in with that initial image. Really, really get it up, put that up there, right? Because I saw some other people did that. They ended up with a reference image or a topology image as the thumbnail. That's no good, right? You guys have searched on Behance, right? When you're searching, how much stuff is on Behance? A ton, right? A deluge, a tsunami of amazing artists. And so you've got to really stand out in that grid to get people to click on your thing. And so you've done a lot of work here, Gage, with this, but you got to put the headlines first, right? You guys know about that saying from journalism, don't bury the headline, in terms of, you want the thing that's going to catch people's attention to be the most visible part. And then once they're drawn in, show them how thoughtful you are, what a thoughtful image maker you are. And then also here with your Sketchfab, you want to set the camera default, right? To not way out here. Set it to like an angle. We talked about this from like one of your beauty shots so that we see the table in the background. We don't see like the sky view of the entire scene, right? Make it look like it starts off with a beauty shot. Okay, awesome, Gage. Good work. And I like to hear about how you're solving problems differently, right? I mean, I try to talk about that throughout the semester. Right? That's another reason. I mean, one, I teach 3 classes a semester. And so that's, each class has 5 hours of lecture a week. And so what is that? That's 15 hours of lecture a week. It's a lot. So, on one side, like that's one of the reasons class is unedited, is that the resources are simply not there to edit 15 hours of video a week. On the other side, when I run into problems, I keep them in there so you can see how I solve the problems, right? Most of the time I manage to solve them. A lot of times I don't. Sometimes I don't. It just depends. But there's a process to trying to solve the problems. And the good news is there's more tools than ever to try and solve these problems. And I'm glad that you've got a different approach to solving these kind of things, either through doing the classwork or just trying to solve things. So that's great. All right, Alexis. Here we go.
Here, I wasn't sure how to upload it with. Hi everyone, here is my Behance profile. I have my 3D playground model here. I wasn't sure how to upload it with transparency. I don't know why it has this black background, but I basically just talked.
So yeah, the background, the HDR that you would use in Blender does not show up by default in Sketchfab. That's why Sketchfab has those other HDRs that you can select from and then put in the background of your scene. So yeah, it doesn't.
Talked about my model and how I modeled it and the UV unwrapping with the pig. I also have my video here, and then I show some shots back and forth here with the wireframe. And I also have, I think this is both our wireframes, so I'm gonna have to fix that. But here's the cycles version of my hard surface pig, and here's this version, same here. And then here shows all of my layers and the creative shots that I was making.
Yes, good. Okay, so great. You've got the interface. Again, not just the layer stack, but you got to see the results of the layer stack. That's good.
As well as the UV unwrapping and my hard surface pig here. It's pretty cool how you can actually do this. I didn't like that this was not really sandy looking. Looks very tiled, but still pretty cool that you can kind of go through it like so and see everything. It's pretty easy to control too. Here's my dining table scene. I wanted sort of a 70s vibe. I feel like I conveyed that, like adding the storytelling element to it. Here are my beauty shots and my wireframes. And I also talked about how I achieved this wood varnish, or like wood grain and varnish look. And then I talked about the hand-painted patterns here with the filigrees. I also talked about the Photoshop pattern that I made for this.
Excellent. Very.
And how it gave me an easier time after I did that. And then I used the blur filter. Here is this. I couldn't get the wood flooring to look good with this, so I just kind of did it here, but I don't love how flat it looks. I'll have to adjust that in the future, but it's still really cool how you can see everything up close and all the designs here. So I really like that. So, and
yeah, the table and chair, if you were to re-upload it, you might want to bring the table and chair over at a higher resolution. So because when you zoomed in there, like there's a big difference between the fork and the table. If I can try to remember, some of you did the table and chair as separate texture sets. Some of you did them as the same texture set. Especially if you did it as the same texture set, that means that they're sharing, the same one square of resolution, and so upping that square of resolution would be useful. And I'm trying to remember that was the brand new wrinkle this semester, was exporting the entire scene as a GLTF. That took a couple hours of research on my part, because it's just kind of a weird thing. When you export it, you can you can do this, right? Material, you can export every material as a JPEG, right? And so this is, I would have this one starred in my notes, because this would be super useful in the future, right? This is essential for getting it up on the Sketchfab, because Sketchfab has a size limit, right? I think it's 100 megabytes or something for a free account putting up a scene. And if you noticed, when you brought your scene back from Substance Painter and put all the stuff in there, we were using PNGs. Why were we using PNGs? Because they're lossless and it's a higher quality of data. But they're definitely much, much bigger because it's an uncompressed form of data than a JPEG. And they were just, the whole scene would have been too big to upload. And so when you export as a GLTF, it does this automatic conversion from PNG to JPEG, and that allows the whole thing to be small enough to go up there. And so this principle, trying to get it small enough to go up to Sketchfab, this would also be the case if this stuff were going into like a mobile game, right? Or something where there's going to be less compute and less memory, right? Well, without going off on a tangent here, where there's less memory, okay? So the, you have this beautiful scene, but you need to smush it down into a smaller size. That would be one way to do it, right? Yeah, and switching out the background here, this is not, that looks fine. I think that looks good. It looks great in the beauty image that's up there. The mobile, what am I trying to say? Totally lost my train of thought. Okay.
And what have I learned over the course of the semester? I learned that 3D modeling is crazy. It's hard, but it's also really, really fun, and it's like a nice challenge. I really enjoyed the UV unwrapping aspect of things. I don't know why, it just seems, I don't know, it's like fun. It's like,
okay, there we go. I can't remember getting that feedback from another student in the history of teaching this class, where somebody was like, man, I loved the UV unwrapping. Okay, if that's the case, then like you should double down on that, because there's not a lot of people who feel that way, Alexis. And you might be able to make a name for yourself becoming a 3D UV unwrapping expert. So yeah, if that's that, there's room in that niche for people who want to really want to drill down on UV unwrapping. Right, I have a grant proposal out right now, and if I get it, I'm gonna have to do some deeper dive into UV unwrapping, because I'm gonna need to make like clothing-like kind of stuff. And so UV unwrapping has a lot of overlap with like pattern design for clothing, which I think that part's really interesting. UV unwrapping can be tedious sometimes, but if you're really drawn to it, then you should really, try to focus on that and advertise yourself as someone who likes to do 3D unwrapping. So UV unwrapping, because there's a lot of other 3D artists who would happily, subcontract that out to someone else to help with that.
A puzzle. And also learning about translucency and textures and Substance Painter. And in my own practice, I am going to try to implement 3D models into my design work and kind of use it in my own creative profession. And I just want to be able to do this. It's very empowering to be able to know how to make stuff like this. This summer, I'm probably going to be focusing mainly on sculpting faces and building out characters, and I want to get more into character animation. And yeah, I just want to be able to do stuff that is, more organic, like organic shapes and scenes. Yeah, I just want to try everything. So yeah, thank you all for enjoying my videos, and I enjoyed all your videos. Bye.
Super. Yes, this is the part that maybe I don't emphasize enough. This is why I had you watch that World Builder, right? This is like opening the door into what might be an Uber art, right? Uber being the German prefix. I don't know. I don't speak German. For super. At one point, people referred to opera in this way, in that it was a combination. It was the mega art, the combination of all arts: music, acting, set design, lighting, right? For when opera was the king of the world. Now, right? This is sort of the beginning, opening this door. You can make an entire world, remake the world, remake different worlds as you see fit. And experiencing these won't just be on a screen, but we can experience them, right? VR is still kind of like a marginal thing, but once that takes the next step in the next few years here, where all you have to do is put on a pair of glasses to be in your world, you guys will be, if you continue to work on it, in a really good position as people who can manifest the worlds that they see, or be hired by other people to help them manifest ideas that they have about their worlds, right? Not just static images, but entire experiences. So good. I'm glad, really glad that clicked for you, right? On one side, it's just making a table and chairs. On the other side, it's like, oh, now I can make any table and chairs.
All right, hello. This is my presentation for my Behance final portfolio. So you can see right here, I have the kitchen scene portfolio open first. I'll go through this one first, and I'll make my way to the second one afterwards.
Okay, good.
Oh, sorry. Let me do that.
Good job putting a beauty image first here. I mean, maybe it's the video. This looks a little crunchy in terms of either resolution or aliasing. It feels like this image should definitely have some depth of field, right? Like this, there should be a little bit blurry there on that one, right? It's just, this image is good, but it's not like totally nailing it there. Looks a little crunchy.
So as you can see right here, this is the thumbnail I have set up. Kitchen scene is the title for this portfolio. This is the thumbnail I decided to use. Scrolling down, I know you said it was a 300 word description, but I decided that some of the extra words could be used for some of the process description.
Yep. Okay, in case you haven't noticed, right? I'm not the kind of teacher who is going to go back here and count the words and say that you didn't use enough words here, use too many there, or whatever, right? A lot of these requirements are suggestions. I don't really advertise it as such, because then people just like totally phone it in. But yeah, they're sort of a first step for how you could lay these things out if you have no idea. But if you've got some kind of idea already, do that idea, right? Right, in terms of like reorganizing what you're doing here. I'm really just trying to get you to spend some time verbally communicating what it is.
This is down here, so I kind of went more in depth down here, and just kind of was about like half the amount that was up here. So going with this, the image above is a beauty render for a kitchen scene that was modeled in Blender. All objects here are modeled using a reference photo as scale to model. These objects were made with the use of a bounding box technique and with help of modifiers such as subdivision surface, mirror, solidify, and bevel. After all the objects were modeled to their correct forms, they were sent to Adobe Substance Painter and all textured there. All of the textures follow a theme of a worn out or grunge-like aesthetic, with peeling paint and dirty surfaces. After all the objects were textured, they were sent back to Blender, where I set them up as the image above, and added canvas with depth of field to get different shots of use of the table. I then rendered all the shots using cycles to get the final result. I will give more detail about the modeling and texturing process below.
Yeah, good. I don't think you need that last sentence, right? Like, it's kind of implied that as you scroll down, there's more detail. I would capitalize Blender, Substance Painter, and Cycles here, right? Right, because yeah, it's necessary. They're proper nouns, and they're also words that mean something else, right? So, I mean, if you just Google Blender, the 3D modeling program is not the first result, right? It's Blenders. And so in order to avoid that kind of confusion, remember, who is this for? People in the know and potential, ostensibly people are hiring you because they don't know how to do this. Sometimes, it's an art director who does have the chops, not always. And so you kind of need to speak to a wide audience there, right? If you showed this to a member of your family who was not really savvy about these things, would they be able to understand what they're looking at, right? That's always a good tip.
We have here is this is the 3D model for the scene. For this, I decided to just go with the smaller island instead of the whole brick walls thing. I felt like that was just a little too much, and I feel like the little island would be better for just keeping with the project. Just to keep it focused on the table. So we on down. This is the process image for the fork. This is it in Blender with all the modifiers. And this is it in Substance Painter with all its layers. Close that off real quick.
Yeah, so seeing the fork next to those things would help.
Going to the description here. The image above shows my process for the fork that I molded and textured. The fork was made using a reference photo. I first started with the plane that I scaled to the rough box size of the fork. From there, I formed my base plane to a trapezium, and then used an extrude and loop controls to control and form the shape of my reference fork. After the rough shape was made, I used a solidify modifier to give it a full 3D form and subdivision surface modifiers to smooth out the surface to reach a better form for the model. After these modifiers were applied, I UV unwrapped them and sent them to a Substance Painter. Here, I added a base metal layer and another layer with height information that I would use to give it its pattern. I then added another height layer to get some smaller detail. Both of these height layers were given blur modifiers to soften the edges of the height engravings. From here, the fork is ready and it was sent back to Blender and used it in the beauty renders. This process was used for the other utensils as well. So you can see right here, solidify, subdivision, and then the different layers, the base metal layer and the height layers. This one right here is the process pictures for the chair. I'll go into it right here with this one. The image above shows my process for the chair models. Same as the fork, I use a reference and model to scale. Same as the fork, I used a reference and model to scale.
Okay, Efren,
And
we're
there,
going to
I
fast
first
forward a little
started by
bit here.
adding a base and chair texture, and then I was ready to send back to Blender. It's like a little bit more of an open.
Yeah, okay, good job here. I feel like for the most part, we've got an appropriate line weight. You know, it's definitely denser here. And so, you know, a shot where we're zoomed in on the, yeah, okay. So here we see this in detail. And so that helps there. Yeah, these beauty shots look good. Again, I might put them up closer, and then again, you've got some strong, longer bits of type here, and I might move it around, split it up a little bit more. But you did keep it all left aligned. That's good, and you got your stuff on Behance.
All right, hello.
And
This is my
Sketchfab.
presentation for my Playground portfolio, Solidify and Bevel. Most of these modifiers were used and not.
This is good. Did I tell you all to post your Behance links on Discord? You did. Okay, good. All right, yeah. So yeah, we're just gonna fast forward a little bit here, Efren, and we can all read it on the Behance page.
Let me turn it down a bit. This is just the updated one right here. I kind of went back in and fixed a bunch of the stuff.
Yay! Yes, exactly. I went back and fixed the things, right? I'm not saying do it next week, but you know, later this summer when it's still relatively fresh, take some time and go back and look at the portfolio again. You'll have fresh eyes, right? You will not have been working on this for 28 hours straight or whatever you guys are doing to try and finish it up. And once you have some fresh eyes, it'll be a much clearer decision-making process in terms of like, what do I need to do here to make this look better to present?
There was a bunch of weird rendering issues that I noticed on the first one. Fixed the size of the pots as well. So just kind of went back in and did a bunch of little fixes here and there. Probably not something you're going to notice immediately if you were to look at the old one and the new one. But if you were and to just check the smaller details, you'd probably notice some differences here and there. So this is the little presentation video I got. Then we go on here to the 3D model. This is pretty much a little 3D model right here. Give it a sec. I did add the displacement modifier. Pretty much how it is right here, as you will see in the video. Moving on down. For this one, I didn't decide to pair them. I just kind of went through like single ones right here.
Yeah, it's good. You've got your modifier stack in here, but you know, definitely put the appropriate put the thing next to it so that people know what that's applied to, right? Now that you've taken this class, you could look at a screen capture of a Blender modifier and have an idea of what's happening. But a lot of almost everyone else is not going to be able to do that. And so that would help quite a bit here. Let's see, what did you say about Substance Painter? We didn't really paint much of these. Okay, cool. Well done, Efren. That's the biggest thing here with your portfolio is just those images from the interface need to have some accompanying visuals to know what they're being applied to. But I think you loaded everything into Sketchfab well, and that all looks really good. Hold on one sec. Notification saying Clarendon is in lockdown. Where did you go to school?
Oh, Madison Highland Prep. New high school.
Like, what's at Clarendon? I'm just searching. So you were more downtown?
Yeah, close.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I got my kids out here in school. Okay, sorry. I need to just take that. Here's Shyla.
Hello everyone, my name is Shyla. Here is my first portfolio on Behance of the kitchen that I made. So I started with the beauty renders next to the topology because I looked at the ArtStation portfolio and what really drew me into it was the initial picture. So I was like, I'm gonna do that too.
Bingo! All right, great. It's super that you noticed that and then copied it here, right? Exactly, right? This is, I think it was Gage and then a few other people, right? You gotta have the hits right out front, so you draw people in to look at everything else. This is. Okay, you may have gone a little too far here, right? It's kind of actually hard to even see the topology lines there. At first, I didn't even see it. Yeah, they may be a bit too... You know what? They might not be too thin if they were just over gray rather than over the rendered topology. But yeah, these, if you're going to make them this thin, in order to be visible, I think it needs to be just the gray flat pass underneath. Okay. So that we can see better what's happening there.
Because it was a good idea. And then I put the summary and stuff
Okay, great. You separated things into separate paragraphs. That's
after about how I created it and
Blender and Substance Painter are capitalized.
where and how and like the process and methods or whatever. And then the actual scene is right.
Okay, you've definitely got a problem with floating stuff. And so this is just, you know, everyone who does 3D work is going to look for that kind of thing because it's hard to fix sometimes, right? And so that guy, the table is not on the floor, right? The good news is you've got shadows. The bad news is the shadows make it obvious that the thing's not sitting on the ground. So that's not too bad of a fix. I don't think you can fix it directly in Sketchfab. You gotta re-upload or whatever, but it should be a fairly quick fix there. And then the other thing is that your light source is really off to the side here. See how long these shadows are that are being cast here? This is not the usual practice. I noticed it up here too because you're so off to the side that it looks like there's a really strange shadow being cast here on the table. And so, yeah, your light source needs to be more up and centered so that you're not casting these super long shadows. Those kind of super long shadows, those would be the kind of things. We do see those outside at dawn and dusk, but it's not the kind of thing we're used to seeing for interior scenes like this.
I talked about the layers, the UV map, and how I modeled it with the lazy mouse and whatnot. And that's the first one.
Good. All right. You included the visual part with the modifier stack and the layer stack. That's good.
Alright, and here is the underwater playground portfolio. This one's
Yeah, so this looks really good. I mean, real life caught up to Shyla's design here, right? Like at my son's school, they just installed what could only be described as massive new playground. And all of the new playgrounds have this, super nice color palette design where like all the stuff matches. It's not like the playgrounds I grew up on where it's just like a bunch of random crap. This is like a massive designed play experience, and yours looks like that. Which
also themed. This time I put some separate beauty shots first. So these don't have topology or anything, they're just random because the playground had a lot to look at, so I wanted to show that. This is the showcase video that we revised. And then same thing, the summary comes after about how I did everything. I try to be concise, but also like use the vocabulary and stuff.
excellent. Check, right? Be concise, but indicate that you can communicate about doing this kind of work.
And then here is the Sketchfab embed.
Looks like we got some floaty stuff here again. This may be a result of the displacement modifier from the displacement material on the sand in Blender not transferring to Sketchfab. Aaron, did you notice that the sand did not displace when you uploaded? Did you upload this to Sketchfab or no?
I did, yes.
Yeah.
I think I simplified mine and/or removed the subdivision and multi-res modifiers to reduce the file size
Okay.
because it was pretty dense in order to get the displacement that was actually in the material.
Yeah.
So I just didn't really bother.
Yeah, depending on the material that you used and the way that the displacement was set in Blender, it probably raised the whole thing up in addition to making it bumpy. So yeah, I mean, go back to Blender, and in Blender, the Blender Kit sand that you used here, disconnect the displacement input, and then that will look like how it will look when you upload it to Sketchfab, and you can then properly it would make more sense just to raise the floor up rather than move all the objects down.
Edmund, and then the topology shots with next to the beauty shots. And then the process here, I have basically my plant journey, so from Blender to SP, and then just like a random slide thing. I kind of struggled to find some process shots
No, you didn't. The stuff with the plant here looks great. Yeah, this is very
for the playground because I didn't take as many archives or I guess incremental saves as I did for the kitchen. So I will definitely be keeping that in mind for like future portfolios where I want to like go back. I need to make more incremental saves rather than rewriting. So
Yeah, I mean, incremental saving is just good all around, right? It gives you some insurance against the file getting corrupted, and then also you're right. It also gives you this history so that when you want to go back and create some process documentation, it is super useful. I think something I'm going to add to the class next semester is I'm going to have people do some OBS recording of them modeling like in real time and then upload time-lapsed versions of it so that we can see the entire thing. And so that will be good for teaching, right? We can see if I can tell if you're doing something totally weird. And then also that would be a really visual thing for people to see in your documentation. Again, when you show this kind of stuff to the non-initiated, the people who aren't, in there taking 3D modeling classes, it's all super visually impressive. People really dig all this stuff. And being able to show the process of taking a cube and turning it into a chair is really illuminating for people who aren't thinking about this.
some other things I learned was mostly in Blender, because I mean Substance Painter was kind of like Photoshop but 3D, and then After Effects I've used that a little bit before, but Blender I had no idea how to use any sort of 3D software, so now it's like I can look at an image or come up with an idea and plan out how to make it in Blender and then execute.
Boom, that's the whole thing, right? That's the most important thing to take away from the entire class, right? You can see things in the real world and immediately your mind's like, okay, well, cube, some other cubes, extrude, bevel, subdivision surface, right? Like just you're like, I'm doing that math all the time now, right? With the 3D modeling, and then as you're doing more animation, right? You're watching TV with commercials, every commercial. I'm just thinking about like, okay, well, they did this by compositing this, and then they rendered that, and then the whole thing, right? Trying to understand, that's the way I've learned pretty much everything, right? I saw something, I tried to break it down and recreate it, and in doing that process is the key to success.
Execute those with like lofting and lathing or whatever. So that's where most of my learning happened, but I think it was really cool to open my playground project again, because I looked at it and I used to think it looked really good and then now it's like, oh, I could have done this a little bit better, or like I know how I can fix this if I redid it. So that was nice because that means that I improved. And I mean right now,
Yeah, okay, so I'm not a therapist, right? But this is the whole thing. You look at old things you made, and yeah, you're like, oh, geez, I'm a lot better now. But there is a cycle to that thing, and then you can look back at it again later, and then you can be like, well, I was really good for the time, and like what I knew at the time. And so, but being able to tell that there's some process and some improvement there is super important and good. There definitely is.
my kitchen looks pretty.
You gotta remember, we're one semester in here, right? Like most of you guys came into this class really green, having not really 3D modeled anything. And look at how much stuff we 3D model. Ultimately, I think that's the best teacher, right? There's just the longer I've been alive, the more and more I've realized that in 99.99% of cases, talent is irrelevant, okay? Consistency of work is the biggest thing, right? Someone can be have far less aptitude and less quote unquote talent for something. But someone else who just continues to do it consistently, always has better outcomes in the end, 100% of the time, right? Anybody whose talent was at the level that it would overcome that paradigm, those people are not in this class, right? And so you really got to enjoy the process, right? That's the other. If I had developed and cultivated that mindset earlier in my career, the earlier the better, right? The winning an award, getting a grant, all that stuff, great, right? But you have to enjoy the work. You can't look at the work as work, right? Especially this. This is not digging ditches. It's, making new things out of nothing digitally. And so enjoying the process is the biggest, most important part, because that will lead you to create a consistent practice where you work on it over and over and over again.
Good to me, but maybe in the future I will open it back up and be like, wow, this I could have done so much better or something. So that was nice to see and look back on as like inspiration. As for like my own projects, I will probably be using 3D for like backgrounds and small objects and vehicles. I might give characters a try, but it would probably be more cartoonish. But I'm definitely interested in the backgrounds. I love like 3D architecture or like vehicles. That's always like caught my eye in animation. So over the summer, I plan to incorporate that into my like art and stuff. I'm even working on something right now, and now that I know how to make 3D objects and then bring it into Substance Painter, even if it's just like a smart mask or something, like super easy, slap it on, and then I just like give it a little bit of blur that's a 3D background that I could easily use for something 2D. And if not that, then I can just make some like gadgets or equipment or that vehicle. So I'm pretty excited to get into it.
Yeah, great. You're seeing the matrix, right? You're seeing all the possibilities for doing this kind of stuff. Yeah, there's a big overlap here between 3D art and then 3D, let's call it product design. Some of the there's some differences here with the underlying structure of the programs that make these things, but there's a lot of overlap in terms of just the artistic production of these things. So things like cars, appliances, and just recently there's people bridging these gaps in terms of this type of thing. So if you're into cars, right? I'm kind of into cars. I mean, I'm not like a car guy or whatever, but I do appreciate especially older design cars. But Ash Thorpe would be a name I would write down. So he's someone who came up through graphic design, like just straight up 2D text-based graphic design, worked his way into 3D, sort of through the Cinema 4D scene, and then really got into 3D design. But he is a car guy and started, designing cars, just in 3D. And, obviously he's real good and has a really great artistic sensibilities. But now he's working with real world car customization companies. What's its name? Hoonigan is one that's known, to make some of this stuff IRL for reals, which is just, super cool. And there's more and more of these kind of overlaps of people, conceiving of things as just bits and then bringing them to life for real. right? This look as I scroll through this page. I'm also going to put this on the list here in terms of documentation here, right? Like we can see the rendered final, and here's some of the animation flat pass, right? So you can see how much work is being done there in the render and the composite. You see how much work the motion blur does here to really give it a sense of speed in this render. It's beautiful. Anyways, and so he's done a bunch of things now where his design work got noticed by Hollywood, and he's done work there. He did the new Bat-Car in the Pattinson movies, which, you know, I'm into. It's like very, you know, Batman, the muscle car. Where is it here? Is it this one? I think it's this one. Yeah. The Batman. Yeah, he designed this, you know, like super wide, super nice. I liked the movie a lot. I thought it was great. Yeah, so really great process shots here. We need to get these in our Behance portfolios. We need to get sliders. There's got to be an open source slider that we could use in our portfolio, because that would help the staging of things quite a bit. Yeah, so here's some like earlier designs. You can see this one looks a lot more like the who was the director for the other Batman movies before that? Christopher Nolan movies, right? You guys seen the Christopher Nolan ones, right? Where the Bat-Car looks more like a tank or whatever. Anyways, that's not what it ended up looking like in the movie. This is more of this muscle car thing. Anyways, this is a whole thing now where there's like a lot of overlap now between, you know, the 3D design and then people bringing those things into the real world. I know he's a super big Akira fan, and so he did some Akira work, and you can see the Akira influence. You guys know what I'm talking about, the light bikes in Akira. If you haven't seen Akira, you know, I'm not a big anime person, certainly not as big as, not nearly the kind of fan that I'm sure a lot of you are. But if you haven't gone back to see Akira, I would recommend taking the time to do that this summer. But anyways, you know, they have this, you know, Tron-ish motorcycle design in that movie. It's super famous. People have built this for real in all sorts of like crazy custom builds now. And, you know, like I said, I'm a musician too. The Akira soundtrack is one of my all-time favorites. So good. And it's really weird. You know, it's like this, God, I'd love for there to be a documentary about what happened there. It's like this Japanese composer / choral collective thing. It's really good. It's really good. Andrew.
Hello everyone, here is my final presentation video for you guys. And this is a preview of my Behance pages for the different scenes that we created in this class. Starting with the playground, it begins with the 3D model from Sketchfab, followed by the Blender description and the Substance Painter description of how I made the objects and the scene.
Those look really good, Andrew. Just break it up a little bit, right? You don't want to have that much copy, you know, spread that out now. Break it up and put it underneath each visual component of your portfolio.
This one includes a showcase video, as well as some process images that show different modifiers, some of the layer stacks from Substance Painter and the shader graphs. It also includes topology shots, as well as the full view and close-up beauty passes. As for my kitchen scene, it follows a similar template. Starts with the 3D model from Sketchfab.
Great. So notice that Andrew set the initial camera angle here on the Sketchfab embed so that it's not, you know, way zoomed out. It's as if it were.
Continues on to
The napkin's still too big, Andrew. There's like cloth napkins substantially.
Blender and Substance Painter descriptions, some process photos, same as before, the topology shots, and the full view and close-ups. As for my descriptions, I tried to go through all the objects in the scene and describe the whole process of modeling them, and then for the Substance Painter, the process of texturing them, talking about the different modifiers I used, and the different layer stacks and how they kind of all incorporated into the overall design of everything. As for what I learned in this class, I feel like I learned so much. I basically came in here not knowing anything about 3D modeling. I think before I opened Blender maybe 1 or 2 times, and it never really worked out. And honestly, I didn't even know what Substance Painter was before this. So I feel like I've gained so much knowledge, a great baseline to build up from, and continue learning these skills. I also learned a lot of the technical skills behind both these softwares, like learning the hotkeys and like the navigation between everything. I mean, just like understanding like even how to switch from wire view to the full render view and all this kind of stuff. How I'm gonna continue showcasing my projects. I think Sketchfab seems to be like a great software to be able to put your 3D models on the web, as well as Behance.
Yeah, so for right now, just being able to have people to be able to look at a 3D thing on the web, Sketchfab is definitely the best solution. What's coming down the road? Hopefully, I mean, there are things like this now, like hopefully down the road you can upload a 3D model to your website or just any sort of page on a server, and it would be displayed as a 3D view, right? The only problem is every browser would need to represent those things. There's too many solutions to this problem. There's no one standard one. And so coming soon, that will be hopefully something that's not quite as cumbersome, and Sketchfab is not the only game in town, but clearly being able to see the whole thing in 3D without, you know, loading up Blender is super useful and valuable.
Really like describing all the techniques and everything involved in the whole process, I think is very, very valuable, not only for me, but for other people to see and understand my working process. I think I'm gonna continue posting on these websites for my future 3D models. Using these skills going forward, I am a game developer, so I want to create various 3D models that I can incorporate into my video games. I think this will help me really hone in my skills and make me better at 3D modeling. I also think watching more tutorials will help me, and I can at least understand what they're trying to tell me.
Yeah, right. So the good news is there's lots of Blender tutorials. The bad news is there's lots of Blender tutorials. You know, like Blender in particular, because it's free software, which is great. It's one of the major reasons that we, you know, like this year, this is the end of the first academic year that we switched all of the GCC classes over to Blender, right? We were doing Cinema 4D as our major 3D program previously. And for a variety of, one of the main reasons that we switched is Blender is freely available, right? So there's not any financial barrier for anybody. And so that's obviously great. So there's a lot of people my age who aren't super jazzed about that. But everyone your age is really into it, right? As far as freely available tools and resources on the internet. But as you learn something that has a lot of information like this about it, being able to vet that information, right, is a super valuable tool, right? Which Blender teachers, which Blender tutorials will be more valuable than others, right? Occasionally, there's some sort of hang up in the program and someone's like, click here, click here, click here, done. And occasionally we need those kind of things. But far too much of the Blender YouTube scene are tutorials that consist totally of that. Click here, click here, click here, with no discussion as to why, what, how, any of that. And I try to really, in this class, maybe too much for some of you, go into that. But if you know the why, what, and how, then eventually the click here, click here, click here, you can figure out on your own, right? Because you know what it is you're doing. You know what it is you're aiming at. And as the software continues to change, what you're doing and why you're doing it is going to be a more and more important skill. Because hopefully, part of the AI future is the click here, click here, click here goes away, right? You guys will definitely live to see the end of click here, click here, click here, right? You'll be able to just communicate with the software, communicate with the environment in a much more natural way, where you're like, bevel my chair, right? Now, maybe you need to be more exact about it, but you have to understand what a bevel is, why you would want your chair to be beveled, all those kind of things, right? But that's the underlying idea, that you can deal and think in ideas and not in just clicks, right? Because just knowing the clicks and not knowing any of the other stuff is not going to be a super great long-term strategy for being a contributor in this ecosphere.
For the most part. As for future projects that I plan on doing, I think I'm gonna try and start with some smaller, like, environmental objects that can be placed in like a Unity project. And I think something that I really want to try to do is model out a car and different vehicle types. I don't think it's too out of reach of my skills, but I think it'll definitely kind of test everything that I've learned in this class. But yeah, thank you for everything. I think I learned so much, and I can't wait to continue learning more about 3D modeling and texturing and all this good stuff.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, Andrew, I'm not sure whether it's on your degree program or not, but AVC 200, that's the animation and interactivity course. People teach that differently. When I teach it, we make 2 games, one in Unity, one in Unreal Engine. And so taking a lot of these skills and applying them to the game development environment, that's what we do there. And I'm teaching that in the fall. Let me know if you'd like to get into that class. Be happy to have you. Okay. Again, like I said, I think I said this to everybody. I said it to Aaron at the beginning. Everyone who's made it to the end here, if you need to get into any of my classes in the future, please just send me an email and I can override you into the class. You've all gotten the golden tickets for future enrollment if you want to take any of my classes.
With my portfolios, and this is what I have. First, we're going to start off with the kitchen scene. And I started off with the 4 beauty renders next to the topology ones as well. The wide shot to grab attention, the plates as well, and the lamp last. I think it looks nice with the ones in the middle strings. Then following that, we have the summary, which basically just explains how, or the order that the scene was made.
Okay, left align the text, right? No center.
which was first the table, chairs, cutlery, plates, napkins, and lamp, which technically isn't wrong because I did put the lamp in there last, but um and it explains in a bit of a detail how everything was modeled and painted, and there's more details in the process section, so there's not many details on how everything was made on with this one. And then following that, we have the 3D model, which came out nicely.
Great, good. You
Uh,
set that initial camera.
I swear the chairs were a bit darker in Blender, but that
Yeah, the differences between rendering environments, we're going to run into things like this depending on color space, a bunch of other things. But, for the
probably was the lighting. But either way, I think it came out nice, and you can just really zoom in for the detail as well, which I like. Then we have the process. I chose to use a Substance Painter for the first one of the table, showing off the layers with an explanation of how it was made, like using a quarter of the table and using the mirror modifier to take advantage of that, as well as the process of painting it. And then we have the beginning stage of the fork, how it was made using a single plane that was cut up by the knife tool, and then extruded by the edges to create the shape of it. And this was before I added the solidify or the the actual subdivision. Right now, there's just a temporary one, and that's what the little summary right here is. And then finally, we have the end version of the fork, is the Substance Painter one, which is the same thing, just explains how it was made in Substance Painter, which is just the base, which is the metal that we created on both. And then on this one, it explains how I use the height with a brush to create the lines and indents to make it look nice with the mirror. And that is the kitchen scene portfolio. I am happy with how it came out. And if we move on to the playground scene, it starts off with it's the same layout, but we start off with the cow, topology, merry-go-round, the plant, and the Thunderdome. The summary is the same thing, how it was modeled, the process of modeling, how first started off with the climbing dome and merry-go-round, moving on to the slides and swings and playset and the climbing animals and texture. I started off with the four shows what I know about modeling and shows what I could potentially end up doing better for either one. And how would I apply this to my career starting out? I plan on going for video game production, and modeling in video game production in general is just needed. Since no matter what, even if you just code, even if you know music, you're still gonna need models, you're still gonna need sprites. It's just part of the process that you need to learn. And I did learn a lot from this class since I did try Blender myself, but it didn't really click at me for me at first. But after this class, I now know a lot more about Blender. There are still a few things I don't know, but I can try to research that myself. But I learned a lot about this class. I learned how to use primitive shapes in order to sculpt things, how to use modifiers, how to UV unwrap, how to use Substance Painter. If I had more time and more creativity and effort, I could have definitely made these way better. But honestly everyone can with practice and focus. And like you said, it's better to think of these as projects and not as an assignment, but I couldn't get myself into that mindset, but now hopefully I will be able to. And which is why I also plan on during the summer to maybe do a entire 3D model of my room. It'll be challenging, but it'll be a test of what I know and what I can apply.
Yep, that sounds like a
I'll try my best to model everything the best I can, but it is a challenge for the summer that I plan on imposing on myself. And
3D modeling, great for the Arizona summer. Too hot.
yeah, that's all that I have.
Super, great. Christian looks really good. Get that text left aligned, okay? But yeah, this is good. Focusing on the fork and taking us through the fork process. I feel like you documented that pretty well. Yeah, good job here. Yeah, having these next to each other, it's really hard to see the lines, the dark lines on the brown there. So maybe a more, switching out the material on the table and chair so that you can see the topology a little bit better might be a good idea, right? Just, ask yourselves, is this image communicating what I wanted to communicate, right? Regardless of how I did it, how can I get back to the correct, how can I best communicate what it is that I'm trying to do here?
Good day all. For this week's presentation, I bring to you my completed Behance portfolio pages for both the playground scene and the kitchen scene. You'll see here for the playground scene that I chose to give the page kind of this ethereal vibe, kind of dreamlike, to mirror the almost surreal aesthetic of the playground itself. I talk here about...
So how'd you do that? Like, you masked these out in Photoshop or something?
I made the whole site in Illustrator.
Okay.
And then chopped it up and uploaded it.
It chopped it up and then uploaded it. Okay. All right. These definitely have to go across. Okay. So you want the grid design of it to extend. We want to have the same left and right sides for the grid on all of our text sections here, like so. Cool. All right. The one, something strange. So you used like a blur effect in Illustrator?
It's a clipping mask with a gradient.
Okay. Okay.
I give the page kind of this.
And then you exported like a series of JPEGs or PNGs or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just kind of it into a bunch of dreamlike to
Okay.
that are aligned perfectly mirror the almost surreal aesthetic of the playground itself. I talk here about how people envision the past and how their experiences can cloud their view of things like playgrounds. I wanted to talk about each of my projects somewhat symbolically and kind of imbue them with a deeper meaning, even if that deeper meaning wasn't necessarily intended from the beginning. Here I expound on the research I did to try to get the roach to look like a proper playground animal, as well as the techniques in particular blending modes, used for some of its texturing. And for the plant, I of course discuss layering UVs and using the alpha channel. And of course here for the pot, I talk about the height map here that's of some interest. And of course here you have the scene itself, the showcase, and the showcase video with some little captions there. For the kitchen, if it would load, please. I wanted to spotlight the kind of dichotomy between the antique plates here, or the antique plates and silverware, and the more contemporary ceramic and stainless steel ones, which I discuss here. I sectioned it off between modernity, and antiquity. For the modern section, I discuss the forks here and the topology used, and for antiquity, I mainly discuss the filigree, how I made it look grungy with the micro height channel, and the lamp with modeling it overall, as well as a bit about the transmission perhaps. And of course we have some sliders, or some topology reveals, the scene itself.
Okay, how'd you do the slider? That's great.
There's an online tool called Juxtapose.
Juxtapose?
That allows you to upload 2 files.
And then you embed it like you do? Okay. Okay. Can you post a link to that on Discord? That'd be great. Yeah, that's perfect. To slide back and forth, and good choice of white there, because most of your things are darker, so it makes it easy to see the
and farther down the showcase, or this one didn't have a showcase video yet. And it looks like I might need to edit these so that they aren't scrolling, but regardless, that is both the portfolio pages. This semester, pretty much everything I know about Blender and 3D modeling derived from this semester's workload. I've definitely taken a liking to the medium, and I plan on practicing over the summer with probably an array of static hard surface models that I have yet to plan exactly, but I'll have them be each a bit more complex than most of what we worked on in class, as I'll have hopefully more time to work on each of them and learn something new. Otherwise, I'll of course include the work done for this class if it is good enough, as well as any other work I make over the summer in my portfolio to facilitate job applications. And of course, if a personal project comes up that will use these skill sets, I'll of course use them for that. I may be working on a game over the summer that will likely use a few 3D models, so I look forward to possibly using this skill set for that. Regardless, that should be just about it for this week's presentation. See you next week.
Nope, no next week. We are done. That's great. You've really good process stuff there, in terms of laying out the different parts of what you did. This one is very successful, okay? And you know, there's some modernity and antiquity. And yeah, you did the thing in terms of like, this is a serif font, this is a sans serif font. We have different color backgrounds. This is, the layout is very pleasing. Right? So you really reached on the layout, which is good. And this one was very successful in that, you know, it's very grid based. This, the only thing here is, you know, have you taken 181 and 182 yet, the graphic design classes?
I took 181, but the curriculum was...
Did you take it here?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, yeah, lining up all of the design elements with an underlying grid, right? Essentially, what you're doing here is just opening the door for, you know, like magazine layout design, right? And this one was pretty good. The only thing here is like I would move this one over, so it's probably on this part of the grid there. If you're doing all this in Illustrator, that's okay, but it's really not exactly the tool for this, right? Doing this kind of thing is InDesign, right? InDesign is like the tool that Adobe has, and you know, it sort of defaults to grid-based layout, and so it makes it easier to do this. And I know you can output the similar kind of thing, you know, like slice it up from InDesign as well. It doesn't just go to print. Like you can, there's people who do whole websites. It's not really the best way to do an entire website or whatever, but for this kind of thing where it's like a static page, that would be fine. So this one is useful, and you stuck to the grid here for the most part, and you know, you have these other little design elements that fill out the grid. This is balanced, like this one is successful. And then using this, everybody, Aaron's gonna post the link. This is great. Instead of having them next to each other, this, especially when you're looking at it on the web, this is definitely a better way to go about it, and we'll definitely do this from now on as a way to show the topology. That's a much better use of the design space there. So yeah, A+, this looks great. The other one has more issues. It's just a little bit more amorphous, and the content of what you're pulling out here and what you're showcasing is all good. It's just that the design is a little less, you know, I just don't think this quite works as well with like this over here. I don't think those work as well as the, you know, green lines in the other one. And yeah, so you wanted to make this one more ethereal and dark, and you know, I think it kind of does that, but then, you know, like it just doesn't, when we get to these sections, the grid part of it kind of falls apart, right? And so I would just try to find a much stronger reference to use here layout wise, right? Like look through Behance, look through some magazines. Do you get Wired or any print magazine, right? I mean, go to the library, like Wired, the design is beautiful in that one, right? And find like a design model for like the image treatment and the layout and the type that you could emulate here for this one, to sort of steer this in a more concrete direction in terms of the layout. The content and the documentation, all great, right? It's just that the layout of this in particular one is just too mushy. I'm not super into this font, the serif thing with, you know, the embedding there, just not as great. You know, like, yeah, if something comes to mind, like I'll look at my, you know, like I've been getting the print version of Wired for a few years now, and I'll go back and see if there's something that I could send you that's something that's a little bit more of a model there, right? Like I think it's really great that you went and tried to like really do something different and striking with the design, and the other one totally worked. It's just that this one didn't quite get there. it just is really falling off the grid for these sections, which kind of just makes it seem not as coherent there. So, but the content and the images that you rendered, really nice angle there. Like these are good images. Especially because we're on the web, right? Everyone's looking at everything on a screen. Everything is in a box, right? So it's hard to get around for that. And so trying to do these softer sort of borders, they either need to kind of, like there's a way that this element could perhaps start to overlap with this up here, right? Because these don't have the hard borders that are over there. Yeah. You pick all this stuff up really, really quickly. I mean, did you use InDesign and Graphic Design 1 at all?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, take all the content you've got here and put it into sort of like a standard InDesign layout. Look and see how that feels, right? Because it's going to sort of force you into a grid-based alignment of things, and then see what you can do from that point there to start to push it more in the direction that you want to go there. But try and find a better reference there. I'll poke around on Behance as well to see if anything pops out as far as someone who's doing something more, spooky here with this kind of design, something that would, the style, like the layout style that you could more tightly emulate there. But the content and everything you got and the documentation, I think is all really great. Yeah, nice highlighting the alpha mask, and that's a clear indicator that you understand how digital plants are made, right? It's not a million polygons, it's very few with the alpha outline. Yeah, these shots are staged well. We got the background out of focus there, which is what we would want. And then you're going to work on a game this summer?
Yes.
Do you have some people that you're going to work on it with? Or it's a solo idea?
It's a solo idea right now, but depending on how far I get and what I determine to be needed for it exactly, I might get some friends to help me if they want.
Cool. What's your idea for the game?
It's going to be I guess, puzzle-based exploration game featuring photographs as its backdrops.
Oh, okay. Have you played Viewfinder?
No.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to sit down and play it yet, but everyone's raging about that one. I think it was called Viewfinder. I'm not even totally sure how it from the trailer. It was about.
She has 2 birthdays now.
Yeah, you're sort of exploring, and then you're finding these images, and then you can sort of like pop into the images. Yeah, and so the images become part of the environment / are the environment. So this is like a pretty cool application of grabbing a texture and then applying it to a mesh.
Yeah, kind of a superliminal.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the details are for the puzzles. It's on my list of things to sort of play. I don't have time to, do much of that during the semester, but during the summer I like to play more games. But yeah, this one, a lot of people, yeah, like, there's some really cool like physicsy things there that happen with these things. I'd seen some of that before previously. Anyways, I had certain people praising that one quite a bit. It'd be one to check out for sure. What's the other good puzzle one I started playing recently? Nothing comes to mind. What's your favorite puzzle game? Yeah. And so you did 200. Do you think you'd start building it in Unity or Unreal?
Unity.
Yeah. Why is that?
More versatility with two-dimensionality and semi-two-dimensionality.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, Unreal can, but I feel like it's more of a, if you want to do a nice looking 3D game, you use Unreal. And if you want to do a 2D game, or something that's a bit more esoteric, you usually
Yeah, Unity is definitely a little bit more of a blank slate, whereas like Unreal, like the first person and third person templates are just sort of like, there's a lot of stuff already laid out for you there, which is, not nothing. And then the underlying graphics are different, but I think Unity would be the right choice there, especially if you're not going to go for some sort of hyper realistic art style, then they can both do both things, but it just it takes a little bit more to get Unity to look super fancy. But yeah, cool. All right, well that'll be cool. I'm looking forward to hearing about that. Cool, beautiful, right? And I really appreciate the ambition with the layout of both of those portfolios. So, and then you've got your portfolios for the other two pieces for the other games as well. Awesome. Are you gonna stick around for 200?
I would, but I have.
That's a pretty big gap. Yeah, there's a whole class in between.
And
Yeah.
I have finals at PC.
Oh, okay.
So,
What final do you have over there?
my art marketing.
Oh, okay.
Education.
Who teaches that down there?
Kimberly Boge.
Okay. I don't know. I don't think I know her. What do you have to present?
We're doing a presentation. It's a semi-open-ended thing. We can do our portfolios or describe our thought process for a few similar pieces. I'm probably going to go that route and describe some of my process, technical process, creative process, and thought process for some of my photographs.
Okay. Cool. Very nice.
This is my portfolio for the playground and the kitchen. For what I'm been talking about is first the playground model and then the kitchen model. I'll start out with the playground model because I want to talk about how my experience with Blender for the past months in the semester. And
Okay. Good. Don't use these as your thumbnail images, right? Again, we want to pull people in. So these should be beauty shots for sure.
And what I will do, or how I'll explain to how I did to in the portfolio, or how I made it the portfolio, and go on from there. Excuse me. Oh, but first, on a side note, I want to talk about Sketchfab about it because I thought it's like a drawing thing for basically hand draw for everyone, but I guess I'm new to this. I'd rather not.
So just to be clear, yeah,
Last time,
Sketchfab
when I recorded, it's not.
Sketchfab has been bought by Unreal Engine, right? So, or Epic, that owns Unreal Engine and Fortnite and everything else. And so they're probably going to change the name, right? It's kind of gotten subsumed into like their content for Unreal Engine, which is all underneath this name, just Fab now. And so I imagine they'll probably change it because the name Sketchfab is terrible, right? It doesn't really tell you anything about what this is. And so, yeah, the idea that you thought it was like a drawing program or something is completely reasonable because that's what the name would apply. But yeah, this all just kind of gets absorbed into Fab at some point. But it's really like one of the biggest online collections of 3D models.
So, but it's so interesting though. It's so interesting. I would probably use I'll probably use Sketchfab a lot for Blender and practices and see how people would do in that.
Yeah, so the thing you want to pay attention to is, is this something that someone modeled or is it something they scanned? Because there's a lot of 3D scans up here on Sketchfab as well. And so those are going to look like detailed models, but then when you look at the topology, they're going to be usually quite dense and not super well organized. That's what the 3D scan is going to look like.
But it's so interesting too, like how the people designed it, how they do it. Oh, it's so cool. All right, I'm gonna try not waste too much time for explaining a lot, but first talk about the playground I modeled. For the model portfolio, I decided to go with a light grayish just to say that I'm new. I started off with Blender and.
Okay, everybody, like, you got to put your best foot forward, right? So don't sandbag your stuff in your description, okay? This is what I did. This is how I do it. Like it's understood that anyone presenting a thing, like it's not flawless, okay? So there's going to be things, but if you're advertising that things were not good or like this design isn't optimal, you just don't want to get in the habit of doing that, right? You want to get in the habit of putting your best foot forward, right? I'm not saying go out there and misrepresent what you've done, but you should just go out there and try to put it in the best light possible.
It's basically like my experience for how I designed it. Basically, a newbie build, or I don't know what term to help, but so here's my beauty shots, and then beauty shots with the wireframe screenshot to showcase what I did for my models and for what I did throughout the class, or rather throughout the semester. However, I don't have the Sketchfab for the playground because apparently it was too big. It's about 461 millibytes.
Yeah, you got to make sure you do that GLTF. If you do the GLTF with the JPEG, it's going to make everything much, much, much smaller, right? So that's
for the limit it'd be 100 millibytes. So I was planning on just probably getting the upgrade, but
you don't need the upgrade, right? You want to make sure that you export it with that JPEG checked, and it'll smush all the textures to a much
the cost is kind of a little too much for my liking. So I'm not sure if that's fine, but I can just showcase the model for the playground, which I can probably pull up right now. Give me a sec. Oh wait, hold up. This was the old one. So, but yeah. Okay, here you go. And you can see here, this is my oh dear. I'm using it's something similar to Sketchfab, but it's somehow added in for my Windows, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, you're just opening a GLTF file on Windows, and Windows has this default 3D file viewer that will open GLTFs. I don't think it will open blend files. So yeah, you just clicked on the GLTF instead of the.
Not sure how that got here, but as you see, it's not greatly detailed for the, for the model. It's an atrocious build for what I did for the when I first started off Blender. I mean, it's not much of an excuse for me to even say that because I could have improved it over time, but I decided to try to keep up with class with the current projects because I can't able to keep up with the time schedule. But I'll put this aside. And then now for the kitchen portfolio, this one I can easily show much. So I decided to go with a light tint brown as a way to getting there, getting the experience of how to use Blender. And for how I did it, I basically the intro would be 1 image, 2 image, 3 image, 4 image, and then the Sketchfab model itself. I don't have the wooden plate in here, as you can see here for this.
Your stuff's floating too, right? You can see that there. So you want to adjust that in Blender. Definitely, it looks like the lamp is floating on the table and the table is floating. Both things are a little above the ground there. And then also go ahead and set that initial camera angle.
And then for this one, it's like in my beauty shots with 2 wire frames as well. But as you see here, I remove it because it's too much for the storage apparently. Last time it works, but I might have made some changes for the texture, so I don't know what to say, or I'm still new to how this works, so but I'm willing to probably learn over time how this works. So I want to start off talking about the playground and my experience with it. I have absolutely no idea to how I can keep up with class. And when I first started off when I first started off Blender, apologies, weird speak. uh, when I first started off class, I went to I didn't know there's a live stream in YouTube, but I decided to keep watching alongside with it as well until like some of the parts that I did just ignore while watching live stream, but also watching the YouTube tutorials with my second monitor right here. I couldn't like last time. I can able to keep up, but then after that, I fell flat with the schedule lately. So I don't know how to able to keep up with the class, but I'll try to explain it. And for the model, I don't have it still. That's why I showed up the for that one for my model. Okay, I will explain about what I did for how I do this. When I first started off with Blender, basically I just put by shape and shape. I mean, honestly, that's what the problem with class. I don't recall as much how I explain it. I try to explain the best of my abilities. This is all the information I typed in for what I did for the playground models.
Okay, like I said, don't bad talk what you have up there. Try to talk about it positively. And then also, your copy here needs a second edit. I would run this through some grammar, just copy and paste it into Google Docs, and that'll call out a bunch of things here that need to be addressed, just with some verb tenses and things to get this a little bit more professional sounding. So definitely do that. If you wrote this in Behance, first of all, don't do that, right? Write it in Google Docs or somewhere where you're going to have your spell check and your grammar check, so that you can, some of these verb tenses and a few other things, incomplete sentences, will be called out there, so that you can tighten up the copy.
And for what I did for the practice in Blender, as you see here, I'm just showcasing my mess, and also we're gonna leave it as a reminder for what I should not do for the remainder for this, but I would also try my best to relearn everything from Blender. But right now, I'm gonna share this just demonstrate what a mess I made. And then so for the kitchen model, or rather the kitchen project I did for the class, it feels it feels more like refined to what I did. Honestly, I would be honest with this. I did this way more differently for the lantern because I decided to go with the Bezier curve strategy. But it's already explained in much about the in my portfolio. I decided with introduction, one image, two image, three image, four image, and then here it is the model for the Sketchfab. And oh, there. And I want to talk about my finally for the what I've been experienced for the past uh, months with Blender. When I first start off, I'm like a chicken without a head, basically. So, but now but now today it feels like second nature for me. But at the same time, I'm still trying to get used to it. So it's hard for me to, well, I wouldn't say hard for me to change. I can probably change it later if we have more time. But at the moment, I can't. But uh, what I'm probably gonna plan on doing for the summer is just taking a break mostly because, and I also need to strategize to how I can do for managing my classes since like last time. I know everyone's year in 2025 is pretty rough and everything happens here and there, and I don't want to talk about it, but I'm just gonna skip through what I want to explain. For uh, for what I want to talk about is that for the class is that I am glad, very glad, and glad to experience Blender and for the how the class do it. I enjoyed the time trying to make the models, even though it is really rough for me when I first start off until like when I get to a certain point for the kitchen models. Yeah, I find it pretty fun, but at the same time, it's just something I would want to learn and remember. Honestly, for the summer break, I've just probably just play Oblivion a lot. I'm gonna be honest. I'm tired and it's just pretty rough lately. So I hope everyone has a great summer and semester. And I'll probably catch you guys in the next class.
If you're wondering why there's a weird audio distortion, that's the culprit.
Okay, you also got some video distortion there. Just as a designer, don't. I mean, is that like a fun thing kids do now? Like stretch the video across like that? Is he doing that on purpose? Okay. As a designer or someone who wants to be a designer, don't do that, right? So yeah, Phil, you're not doing yourself any favors by stretching your face the whole way across the video, right? No one's gonna look good like that. All right, here we go. Phil's got a blooper reel.
Alright, this is my portfolio for the playground and then for the kitchen, and I'll talk about my experience with Blender, first off with the playground and then for the kitchen. On the side note, I want to talk about Sketchfab, this is interesting for me to know about. I never honestly heard about Sketch. Oh dear.
Yeah, so Phil just randomly clicked on the Explore tab for Sketchfab, and then yeah, who knows what came up there? But yeah, like it's the internet, right? So Fab is not in the. There may be stuff that people find objectionable up there. I appreciate you editing that out. Thanks, Phil. Okay, yeah, time management, a big part of going to school, right? Especially if you're taking a bunch of classes. I mean, I usually try to tell students not to take more than 2 of my classes a semester because we do a lot of work in these classes. I mean, that's what I've heard compared to other classes in terms of the workload here, right? I mean, part of that is that maybe as I've spent, the majority of my career in education, I'm not entirely sure that education is a real thing. If we just spend more time doing the thing, we sort of teach ourselves, and I just try to guide that process as much as I can. So there's that. Just being able to schedule the time for doing these things. And so I really try to emphasize that people, spend the time working on these things, ostensibly because it's fun, right? Andrea.
Here's my final project with both of the portfolio pages. First off, I will go over my kitchen scene. I started.
Nice beauty render there. It looks nice. Like well composed shot. I like the way everything's laid out on the table. It's a good top of the page.
Off with a picture of a overview of the scene. I then summarize basically how I did everything with modeling it in Blender, bringing it to Substance Painter, and then bringing it back to Blender. I go into a little bit more detail about like the different methods I use for different things, like the sharing table will use one method, silverware uses another, and then the napkins uses another. And I just go into detail with those. Here is the 3D model where you can go around and look at it. And then I talk about the process. Right here I have the plates and how I did the plates, how I painted them. Here I have the modifier for the fork and how I
That's good. But again, you include an image of the fork next to the...
did that. And then
Yeah, these are good because we can see what...
I also go over the lamp. Since the lamp has 2 texture sets, I also wanted to go over that. And then I go over the typology. I just showcase the typology for 4 of the different things. Actually 5, I included 5. But yeah, and then for the playground, I sort of did the same thing, but I have the overview look as well as the video, and then I essentially did the same thing.
Yeah, that's good. Looks like there's some copy paste. Yeah. I don't know if we can refer to that thing as a Thunderdome. Like, we kind of made that joke in class and everything. Like, I don't know if that's... Other people would... I mean... Jungle Gym? Is that still a phrase people use? Yeah. Climbing apparatus? I don't know. Thunderdome may be a little too stylized for general audience.
With the summary where I kind of just talk about it in general, the techniques I use, and then start like going down what I do sophistically for certain things.
Also, what movie is Thunderdome from? Just to make sure that everyone knows what we're talking about here. Mad Max 2. 2, right? Nope, 2 is... I think it's 2. Did they make a third one with Mel Gibson? Oh, right, they didn't number these. Okay, yeah. Oh, sorry. I stand corrected. Mad Max 3. Beyond Thunderdome. There you go. Tina Turner is in this one with him as well. Yeah, these movies are fun-ish. It's been a while since I've watched the originals. If you haven't watched the new one, Fury Road, and if you're at all into filmmaking, like, it's pretty great. The visual energy, the tightness of the storytelling, the the vehicle, anybody who wants to do some crazy vehicle design, like check, you want to check this one out. Yeah, there's a lot of, crazy cars here that they made in real life. This movie, when it came out, there was, I don't know, controversy or just a lot of coverage in the media about the quote unquote lack of computer effects. A lot of the stuff that would be computer effects in other films, this one they did for real. And so, I'm pretty sure all of the vehicles and almost all of the shots are real things. Yeah, George Miller is the director. I haven't seen the sequel to this one that they just made last summer or whatever. Furiosa, I think. Yeah, Mad Max Fury Road. Maybe this summer we'll go back. Well, I don't know. My son's not quite old enough for these, so I don't know if we'll do a rewatch yet. But Thunderdome is from Mad Max 3, Beyond Thunderdome.
And then I have the 3D model, and then modifiers, the paint stuff, and the.
Okay, this is good, but again, right? What am I communicating here? The topology, and so. What would be a good fix for this one in order to see the topology? What do you think?
Make the outline white.
Yeah, just make the outlines white here, right? Like that, because the fix for having the image be backlit here, right? The shadows being cast forward doesn't let us see much of the texture detail, so that's not ideal either here. Remember, when you do real world photography, you don't get to move the sun around, right? It's not something we get to do. But in Blender, just grab something and just move it over there, right? And there's no rule saying you can't do that to make every shot look as good as possible. I'm saying that you should. So yeah, for some of these shots, certainly the white outline would be a better way to communicate.
Typology as well. I've learned a lot in this semester. I think that the most prevalent thing I've learned is how to have better typology. Before this class, I kind of struggled with that, and I didn't really understand how to not have issues with mesh density, and especially with UV maps, I really struggled with those. But now I think I've understand it. And I think I will showcase these skills in a professional portfolio by showing the best parts of each project and my capability and my process. I will use these skills to make my own personal projects. I think 3D modeling is really fun, and I want to make things I could use in designs and animation. Over the summer, I think I will try to model things I could use in designs, like paints, flowers, things that I like. And overall, I really enjoyed this class, and I'm really glad I was able to create all this work for my portfolio.
Yeah, good job. This looks good. Good job formatting all of this. I would say your copy here, describing everything, looks good. Just a handful of things with some of the images, but in general, your beauty images look nice. This one here, the table, this looks great. Looks really good. Let's see. Let's make sure I'm not forgetting anything. I'm glad to hear that people are going to be really into doing this over the summer. We're going to keep the Discord live for the summer. I think I'll probably set up a summer channel, for people wanting to just say hi. And I have a bunch of, my summer could go a couple of different ways depending on if I get some grants or not. But there's definitely a bunch of things I'm going to be working on. I may stream some of it on Discord as well there, and I would certainly be open to continue to communicate with everybody and the try to help out, answer questions where I can. If there anything specific comes up, And yeah, like I said, if any of my classes, you need anything I'm teaching in a future semester, please just send me an email and I can override you into the class. That's no problem at all. Really good job with the portfolios here. You've all made it to the end, so I wouldn't be sweating a bunch. Don't worry about your grade. Everyone's going to be doing pretty well here. It's just a matter of like keeping up with the class as the semester goes along, and all of you here have done that really well. So congratulations. Just making sure we didn't skip anybody's video here. Nope, that's everybody. Okay, good. Awesome. Yeah, super. I'm glad everybody, this has been a really successful semester. You know, I also don't, I change all of the classes constantly in terms of the projects, as I try to really hone in on projects that I think work from an educational standpoint, and then also having students produce something that's going to be interesting for the portfolio. And so we really tried to double down on that this semester in terms of, you know, making something along with the class, then making something on your own. So, yeah. And yeah, we really tried to build a foundation of working in 3D so that now you could go out and work on, you know, whatever it is that you want to work on. I am teaching 285 in the fall, which is the next 3D modeling class where we do some photogrammetry and some more detailed things. So that's all online as of the fall, although it's not 100% for sure yet. In terms of, you know, being canceled because of enrollment. The enrollment's not quite there yet, but it's still, you know, May or whatever. So keep that in mind. So if you're at all thinking about taking that class, yeah, consider that for the fall. And what else am I teaching in the fall? I'm teaching AVC 240, which is the cinematography and directing class. That one's always a lot of fun. We're going to do Blender in that one, and a lot of working with motion capture and really diving into the virtual camera and working with the virtual camera. That's a really fun one. The end of the semester thing we do on that one is that we do a title sequence for a show or a movie or a game. So a lot of really great projects have come out of that. And then I'm teaching 185 again and 200 in the fall. So yeah, like I said, let me know. And, you know, I had a great time this semester. It was super fun. It seems like everybody learned a lot. And yeah, I look forward to seeing some of you in the fall, I'm sure. So good luck, Godspeed, see you all soon.